If we had to sum up Joe Biden's legacy as far as his economic record goes, it would probably be good metrics, bad vibes. And unfortunately for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, the vibes of this economy ended up being a lagging indicator. And now it looks like Joe Biden probably won't get the credit that he deserves for many of the things that he got accomplished. But if you want to support independent progressive media and help me make it to 1,000 subscribers, please remember to hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to make it to 1,000 before the end of the year, and I would very much appreciate your support. Now, Joe Biden recently made an appearance over at the Brookings Institute. They are a think tank that focuses on fact-based policymaking. And during that visit, Biden held a press conference of sorts where he tried to highlight some of his economic achievements, because there are just so many things that the Biden administration was able to get accomplished that not many Americans know about. And I wouldn't expect Fox News to highlight all of his different accomplishments, but I would expect them to at least be a bit more honest about it. Instead, they introduce this press conference like this.
The lame duck is fighting to define his legacy, or whatever's left of it. President Biden giving a speech and doing his best to put a positive spin on his economic record, one that most folks will remember for sky-high inflation.
Next month, my administration will end and a new administration will begin. Most economists agree the new administration is going to inherit a fairly strong economy. And also learn something from Donald Trump. He signed checks for people for $7,400 because we passed the plan. And I didn't. Stupid.
And Biden is not wrong to say that he is handing off an extraordinary economy. People even over at the Wall Street Journal have said just that. But instead of being honest with the American people and at least acknowledging that Biden had at least some wins while in office, you have people like Jesse Waters that gave stupid takes like this about the Joe Biden legacy.
This is what history will remember Joe Biden for. Okay. COVID got him in office, oldest president of all time, Afghanistan withdrawal, Ukraine, illegal immigration, inflation, industrial policy, lawfare, coup, pardon.
Crime.
That's it. That's it. And he'll just be a sleepy little intermission between Donald Trump's terms. Because this wasn't the roaring 20s. You had all-time highs in suicides, homelessness, drug overdoses under Joe Biden. The only bright spot, because I am so fair as a historian, the stock market and Bitcoin. But for the rest of the country, the American dream was out of reach. Not my words. Those are the words of Kamala Harris. And it's because no one could afford to buy a house, no one got a raise in 4 years, and everybody was saddled with credit card debt. Now, the job gains, which I'm sure Jessica is going to bring up, are a mirage. Most of those job gains were snapback jobs from the pandemic, and a third of those jobs were from foreigners.
Now, most of everything that Jesse Waters just said is untrue, and we will dig into some of the data that will prove that to be the case. But I also wanted to show you this really quick clip from Janine Pirro trying to put all of the blame on Biden for the inflation that we experienced after the pandemic. This is just disingenuous.
$7 trillion of taxpayer money went into the economy, and that was only because of the $1.9 trillion, I should say, that they never conceded and they won't acknowledge that created the inflation, which peaked 17 months into the Biden administration term. That's when it peaked. It peaked because of their policies. And
now, to put all of the blame on Biden is just disingenuous. And she didn't even mention that Trump did more spending during the COVID-19 pandemic than Joe Biden did. So how is it that the government spending done under Trump had no impact on inflation, but then you can give 100% of the blame to Joe Biden because he did spending during the pandemic? How does that make any sense? And to not acknowledge that we went through a worldwide pandemic where people were locked in their homes, where supply chain got all out of whack, and then people experienced inflation, it just ain't right. These people are just lying to their viewers. There is no win that they will ever give to a Democrat. And luckily for us, we have a voice of reason on Fox News with Jessica Tarlov, and she was able to set much of this straight. Let's go ahead and check that out.
The legacy of Joe Biden will be obviously complicated by how this ended and with Kamala losing, but he oversaw the best recovery in the G7 by far and away. Inflation in this country is lower. Unemployment in this country is lower. He expanded the number of people who got access to affordable health care, Medicaid expansion. We were producing more oil than any other time in world history under Joe Biden. The stock market, it was generous of you to give it. Donald Trump is out there trying to pretend that it's because he's coming back, that's why everyone is so hyped about this. We have been hitting record after record after record under Joe Biden. In terms of the jobs that you say are mirages, we can talk about all the revisions that happened under other presidents as well. But even if you removed all of the jobs that we lost during COVID, the snapback jobs, I think is what you called them, under the Biden-Harris administration, we still got more jobs at a faster clip than we did under the Trump administration. It's just a fact. Look it up, historian number 3 at the table.
And she is exactly right about that. We just did a piece about this the other day that shows that when you control for COVID, Joe Biden blew Trump out of the water as far as job growth goes. He averaged, I think, 269,000 per month, while Trump only averaged about 180,000 per month. And I'm not here to tell you that the Joe Biden presidency was a perfect one and that there aren't things that went wrong. There definitely were. But it is disingenuous to try to say that Biden had absolutely nothing to do with all of the great economic indicators that we are now seeing today. Instead, the people over at Fox News want you to think that, Trump got voted in, so people are just anticipating that he's going to do good things for them, and that is why the economy is all of a sudden doing well. It is just disingenuous, and these people, they're just liars. I want to go ahead and take a look at some of the highlight data that I think is important to look at. And while I do acknowledge we didn't have a perfect economy, and I do acknowledge that inflation was very painful for a ton of people, if not most people, there are some really good indicators that we can point to that shows Joe Biden did a pretty damn good job while in office. And let's not forget, he took over when we were in the middle of a pandemic. The economy was cratering. Unemployment was through the roof. And people were locked inside their houses because we didn't have a vaccine. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these things that I thought was particularly interesting to highlight. And we can go ahead and start here. Real gross domestic product has outpaced both pre-COVID-19 and pre-Biden-Harris administration projections. And as you can see here with the blue line is our actual GDP, which is 2.4% above the pre-COVID-19 projection. That means the economy is growing in a much stronger way than economists predicted. We can go ahead and scroll down to the next one here. We've got U.S. unemployment to population ratio is near its all-time high when adjusted for demographics. People continue to throw this, false stat out there trying to say, well, less people are working and this, that, and that, and that. But if we take a look at the actual metrics here, the employment to population ratio is almost at all-time highs. This is another good indicator that we can point to that shows that we have a healthy economy right now. Let's go ahead and move on. The private sector prime age employment rate is essentially at an all-time high. Another great economic indicator for us to point to. And here's where people are less likely to believe the numbers, I think, because I think, inflation was a huge deal for a lot of people. And although this chart shows us that wages are outpacing inflation, that isn't necessarily evenly distributed. So while wages might be going up in certain sectors, they might not be keeping pace in other sectors. So I know that this stuff isn't evenly distributed, but when we look at the economy as a whole, this is a very good metric to point to when we see that wages are outpacing inflation. And hopefully that catches up throughout the whole economy so more people can start to feel that. And then, regardless of how inflation is measured, wages are at an all-time high aside from an anomalous blip in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is great news. Like I said before, this isn't necessarily evenly distributed, but these are the types of numbers that we want to see. We want to make sure that our wages are outpacing inflation. And so I know this election really came down to people and how they felt about the economy. I think the Democrats could have done a much better job of pointing out many of these wins. But unfortunately, it is really hard to contend with somebody's feeling, especially when you have the right-wing media ecosystem that is constantly pumping false information into the ether. So let's go ahead and move on to one more set of charts I want to show you guys. This is from Bloomberg. This was written near the beginning of 2024, but these numbers still hold pretty true today. Let's start here. These aren't necessarily related to the economy, but these are other good metrics that we can point to as a Biden win, especially when we're talking about healthcare. Millions of people signed up for healthcare, taking the number of uninsured Americans to an all-time low. And we can see here that we're at about 92% of people are now insured for their health. They have health insurance, which is an excellent thing. It's as highest it has ever been. And I know a lot of people feel that. Now, unfortunately, it looks like the Trump administration is going to try to roll back the ACA, or how he would call it, Obamacare. And this number could very well plummet under the second Trump administration. So this is something we're going to have to watch very closely. Another here. Salary increases are outpacing inflation. This is just kind of another way to view that. You can see that this line here. Actually, hold on. I think the black line here is inflation, obviously, and then we have wages under Biden in this dark blue here. This is just another way to view that. We kind of already looked at this and how wages were outpacing inflation. Let's see. The cost of living is going down. The rapid disinflation under Biden is unmatched in modern history. I'm not exactly sure how to read this chart, to be 100% honest with you, and I didn't look into it. That's why it's not highlighted, so I'm going to skip over that one. This is really cool here. Green spending is booming, but it's still not enough. The goal of net zero emissions by 2050 requires $1 trillion in transition investment now. But check out how much investment Biden has put into the green economy. And, you've got a lot of right-wingers that are going to rally against this. But the types of jobs these are creating are often jobs that do not require a college degree. And many of these manufacturing jobs for different technologies that are coming here to America, they are high-paying jobs. And that is going to be good for a lot of people, especially if you don't want to have to go to college and get a 4-year degree. Families are richer now than ever. Net worth has climbed under Biden. Sentiment needs to catch up. This is kind of how we started this piece. Good metrics, bad vibes. And it's just really unfortunate that the vibes didn't catch up before the 2024 election, because had that been the case, Kamala Harris probably would have got elected. But as we can see here, family net worth is up. That's also a good thing to look at. And then we will... this just shows you that inequality is narrowing. Most of the wage gains that we are talking about are from the people, or for the people at the lower end of the earning spectrum. That's a good thing. That means the people who are working like minimum wage jobs or things like that, those types of wages are rising faster than, say, somebody who might be an engineer for any given company. The equity market is roaring. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. This is another really good thing that Fox News continues to lie about. They say that crime is just out of control. But as we can see here, violent crimes, especially homicides, have fallen. Now, did it spike during the pandemic? Yes. But ever since 2023, the numbers have started to plummet, and we are now below pre-pandemic levels. And we will just look at this one thing because I do think it is important. Despite all of the positive economic indicators that we've looked at, despite wages outpacing inflation, despite family wealth being at an all-time high, Biden is still very unpopular, which is a damn shame. Like I said, if people started feeling these economic numbers a bit sooner before the 2024 election, it is very likely that Kamala Harris would have gotten elected. But ever since the Afghanistan withdrawal, Joe Biden's approval rating has just been plummeting, and I do think that is too bad because I do think he deserves a lot of credit for pulling us out of the pandemic, and now we are in this soft landing that no economist thought was possible. So, were things perfect? No. But are they doing pretty good now? Yes. And I think we need to remember this as we move forward because the Trump administration is going to start taking credit for all of these things when they haven't lifted their finger yet. They haven't done anything that they could point to that contributes to these good economic indicators. So I will leave it there for now. If you guys got anything out of this video, please remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. Like I said, I'm trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I am in my final stretch with less than 100 to go, so I would very much appreciate your support. If you want to see how these MAGA lunatics are holding up Daniel Penny as a hero that deserves a congressional medal, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.